Hello, everybody, and welcome to This is Reviewable. This is our cats are here today, so you might be hearing some cat noises here and there. But I think I'm going to call an audible, and I
Okay,
I did not tell Micah about this beforehand. But I think we need to talk about a movie that we literally just watched
that's fair.
because
Of the emotional impact.
yes, and it happens to be a Christmas movie,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the first Christmas movie of the season that I actually walked away from feeling like I gained something from it,
That's fair.
you know?
Yeah.
And that includes because we watched Charlie Brown Christmas special, which we can cover in this episode as well, just quickly. I've seen that a million times though. We watched the Christmas pageant movie, the greatest, what is it called? Greatest Christmas pageant of all time
Ever.
ever. And we both walked away from that feeling incredibly frustrated by it, and especially frustrated by how well it's been received.
Yeah, but maybe we're just being Scrooges. I don't know.
I don't think so,
Really?
because okay, this movie is called Small Things Like These, and it's an Irish movie, and it's starring Cillian Murphy and Emily Watson. Those are the two big actors that will be. Oh right, and then also the woman that plays, what's her name? Cat Stark from
The
Game of Thrones.
wife, the mom Stark from
Yeah,
Game of Thrones.
I think it's Cat.
Let's see.
Um, her name. What's her actor's name? Michelle
Michelle
Fairley.
Fairley.
So yeah, it's that's like a very superficial explanation of what this movie is. It's an incredibly slow movie. I guess we should say what it's about.
So there's this man, Bill Furlong. Him and his wife, Eileen, have 5 girls,
Hmm.
and he is the coal man. So this is set in 1985 in Southern Ireland, I think.
Yeah, smaller
It's called
city.
New Ross, I
Hmm.
think. And it's Christmas time. The movie starts out, he's making his deliveries, just running his business. And one of his deliveries is at a convent.
Yeah,
And when he's making a delivery, he sees a young woman get dropped off by her mom, by her parents. And she's throwing a fit. She doesn't want to go in. She is getting dropped off to live there.
yeah,
And if you know very much about, it didn't just happen abroad. I mean, it happened. The Catholic Church, for a long time, for a few decades, would take in unmarried, pregnant women that needed a place so
yeah.
that the parents didn't have to
Deal
have
with them.
this shameful thing
Yeah,
in their face every day. And he sees this woman. I assumed that she's an unmarried, pregnant
yeah.
teenager. And she's getting dropped off, and he sees this happen. And the movie is about his turmoil of seeing that
Right.
and
And
going forward.
just generally, you get it's done really well because it flashes back to his youth
Yeah.
growing up, and he was taken in by a woman, Catherine Stark, whatever, I don't remember, or Mrs. Wilson is her name in this
Hmm.
movie. But the actress that plays Catherine Stark plays Mrs. Wilson. She took him and his mother in, gave them jobs, gave them basically a
A
home.
home so that.
So he's been a beneficiary of charity, basically,
Yeah.
and it will flash back, and at first it's unclear what's going on, but then you realize quickly through certain thematic elements, Charles Dickens in particular,
And storytelling, just.
you realize that like the young boy that you're seeing scenes of is a young
Bill.
Bill Furlong, and it's done really really well. There's a certain point in the movie where he's laying down, he can't sleep, he has insomnia, where he's laying down and he's staring, forward, and it cuts to the other side of the room, and his younger self is staring back at him, and then it's just done. It's done very tastefully, I thought, and you hear his, like Micah said, his turmoil, and he's also just because of his upbringing and because of the charity that was shown to
He
him,
has a tender spot for this.
he notices things around him. He
Yeah.
notices poor people around him. He gives change to
Those
one
in
of his,
need,
yeah,
and he notices how young men treat young women,
yep,
and just he notices a lot. This movie does an amazing job of showing and not telling,
yeah,
you know, of making you feel smart.
yeah,
It doesn't This movie does not treat you dumb.
no,
There's not a ton of dialogue, I would say. And when it is, it's very important.
yeah,
But you notice what he's noticing.
100%.
And you can just kind of feel how uncomfortable some of these things are for him.
I think that's the difference for me between this and the Christmas pageant movie, because the Christmas pageant movie has, you know, I anyway, I don't think personally, I don't think that movie had a great message because I saw very little being done for that family in that movie,
Yeah.
and I walked away feeling like the message was, "Oh, just go to church and it's okay." This one, like Micah said, it makes you feel how uncomfortable it is to see someone who's poorer than you on the street. And what do you do? You know? And I love there was a moment in this movie where he gives some change. He's driving his coal truck. He owns the coal business. He's driving his coal truck, and he notices one of his daughter's schoolmates like walking.
He's probably 10
Yeah,
on the
along
side of the road picking up sticks.
right for fire
Yeah.
basically. And he stops the truck, asks him if he wants a ride, and then he gives him what he has in his pockets for Christmas, basically. And then when Bill gets home, he tells his family that he ran into this kid and what they talked about, and he said, "I gave him what was in my pocket." And his wife's like, "What'd you do that for? Surely his dad's just going to drink it away." And
And she
I
basically is like, you need to cut him off.
like I've heard that so many times in my life. Like don't give money to the beggar on the corner because he's just going to use it for booze or for drugs or whatever.
Yeah.
And that may be true, but I just think
Well, and Killian Murphy's response. So Bill's response to his
yeah.
wife saying, "Why did you do that? He's just going to go and buy alcohol. You need to let him suffer and dry out, basically."
Mhm.
And Bill says, "Maybe he's trying.
Yeah.
We don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
he's trying."
So Bill's doing what he can. He's not using that excuse to do nothing.
Yeah.
He's doing what he can. And that's just one example. And by the end of this movie, there's another example, and we'll talk about that in the spoiler section. But this movie made me want to keep my eyes open and actually try and help.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Christmas should be. That's what the Christmas spirit should be. It should be about helping people because Christmas is a holiday that is absolutely about Christ. That can't be denied, right? That's its origin.
Yeah.
Um,
Something I forgot to mention. So this is not the first movie that Brayden and I have seen about this topic of young women living in these convents.
yeah,
Right? This is the first one that we're talking about on the podcast,
yeah,
but there's this other movie that we watched called Philomena,
hmm
and it talks more about the girl's perspective living in these convents.
well,
And
it's
something that is very sad to learn about this is, these are young women that could be teenagers or early in their 20s or something like that. They get sent away and get coerced into giving up their baby.
yeah,
They're either told that their baby died,
yeah,
or, you're a whore and a slut if you don't give up your baby to, because who's going to marry a young woman with a baby?
yeah.
And you will have no prospects. You won't be able to, intimidated into giving up their baby. And that
Phil
is so sad.
and these were called Magdalene Institutes for like the penitent or something like that. And they apparently we saw the little blurb at the end of the movie, and apparently they were
56,000.
disbanded in like
90
1992 or
or
something.
98, sometime in the 90s.
Yeah, but like this is an absolutely real thing that happened.
Yeah.
Um, so this movie is, like Micah said, it's very slow. There's not a lot of dialogue. Most of the storytelling is done through watching Killian Murphy sort of wander through this life that he's living and try to do the best he can, given the circumstances. He's told in no uncertain terms that it's not a good idea for him to get on the bad side of the sisters that are running
Convent.
this convent because they have their finger in every single pie in the city, and they're in charge of the school that his daughters are going to. So if he gets on their bad side,
His younger daughters won't be able to attend, is what we're assuming.
right? And and what do you do, right? Because he's not he's not he has a business, but he doesn't have such great means that he's able to fly in the face of the convent and be okay, without any repercussions.
Right.
Um, so there's a little bit of a dilemma there, and everybody in the city feels the same way. Multiple people come and talk to him, and they're like, "Hey, you shouldn't. I see what you're doing. You should stop. You need to worry about your family."
Yeah.
And and it's hard for him. It's hard for him to ignore the people around him, but it's also hard for him to help them because he needs to help his family first.
Right. But like we said earlier, he has a soft spot for, like not a creep, like young women
Yeah,
that
because of his mother.
because of his mom.
Yeah. Um, I wrote down here, I wonder if Killian Murphy is tired of playing traditional badass characters like Tommy Shelby. So, because I've noticed he's been taking more meek roles.
Interesting. Yeah.
Oppenheimer was definitely, he's charismatic in Oppenheimer, but he's definitely unsure of himself,
Yeah.
especially by the end. And then in this one, this is the meekest I've ever seen Killian
Yeah.
Murphy.
He
And
did a great job in this movie.
yeah, he's incredible. Emily Watson is incredible in this movie too.
You don't see her very much.
The Nun?
That's Sister Carmel.
No,
Yeah.
no, she's like the leader of the.
Oh, she's the mother.
No, she's the leader of the convent.
Yeah, she's the mother.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Sorry, I thought you were talking about the other one.
I didn't know that she was. Oh, she's not Irish. She's English.
Oh.
Um, she is scary,
Yeah,
isn't
there's this
she?
moment, without spoiling what really happened, that the Sister Mary invites Bill into her office. And like it's very early in the morning. They have the fire going. They don't really have any lights on in the it's a very dimish room with the fire and just the lighting and the subtle, what is the intimidation, or like the double entendres that she's saying. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, I wrote down when she's sitting at the fire, they're at the fire like you said, and they're
Yeah.
and they're talking, and there's like a red glow off one of her cheeks,
Yeah.
and she's like staring straight ahead, basically unblinking, and the things she's saying, I wrote down she looks like the devil
Yeah.
in that scene, and it's like scary. She does a really really good job of being scary, you know for her. She's small, she's not a big woman, like she's,
She knows she has power
yeah. um
and she's not afraid to use it,
right.
from what we saw in the movie.
Yeah. One another thing I noticed I thought was kind of a cool touch is at the beginning of the movie, especially, and when I say he, I mean Bill Bread. Bill goes home and washes his hands every day because he's working all day delivering coal, and he goes home and he has to scrub his hands with this like rough brush
Brush to get
and
all the
soap and all that. And I thought that was cool because like all day he sees things around him and then he comes home and washes his hands of those things that he's seen.
That's really
And
interesting.
I think that bothers him. And then at a certain point he's washing his hands and he's like,
Thinking about things that have happened to him and things that he's
mhm,
seen, and you can see him brushing way too hard. And he keeps thinking and he keeps thinking and he can't stop thinking about it and he's brushing harder. And I was
yeah.
just like waiting for his hands to start bleeding.
Yeah.
And he kind of has to stop and he's like, has to recenter himself.
Yeah. And I think and that's I think the point where he decides he's going to do something. And let's not spoil it,
No.
right? Um is there anything else? Anything else?
I just, if this is a spoiler, like I can bring it up later, but like, why are these places that bring in these women so horrible? Because this is in Ireland,
Yeah.
and the movie that we've seen in the past, I think, was set in the States, wasn't it?
No, it was England.
Oh, was it? It was England.
Philomena. So Philomena, the character, is Irish, and the movie is about an English journalist who finds her and
Oh,
is
okay.
interviewing her about her story, and then eventually they try and find her daughter that she gave up.
Right.
So that that also took place in,
But like, just they were treated
yeah,
horribly, and it's so sad
yeah. I think I don't know why it is like that, but
because like
it's really bad.
other books that I've read, and they're not, a bunch of these are probably fiction,
Hmm.
but like the orphanages that like a lot of these churches put on, those kids were also treated poorly.
It really doesn't make sense when it's supposed to be a church, right? It's supposed
A
to be
church
about
run charity
it,
for the
it's
these
supposed to
orphans
be it's
or
supposed to be Christian. It's supposed to be about charity. It's supposed to be about love and forgiveness. And these religious institutions that take in these kids are anything but Christ-like.
yeah, it's so sad.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's interesting to think about for sure. Mother Teresa, another example.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but
Really fast. I think this is rated PG, is it, or PG
PG-13.
13?
Yeah.
Um, this is a very gray movie.
Yeah.
I will say it's very slow. It's very gray. They don't talk very much.
Yeah.
Amazing, all of it.
What do you mean?
Just the whole setting.
Oh,
The way that it makes you feel. Like
yeah.
you really
It's
like.
heavy.
Yeah, but they really just took away all of the distractions and had you focus on Bill's feelings
Yeah.
and reading Bill's face.
Yeah.
Even in profile, he's able to show so much.
Yeah. I also wrote down here, been a rough year for religion in the movies
Yeah.
because we've got Heretic, we've got Conclave,
Mhm.
we've got what else? This, obviously, small things like these. Maybe those are the three.
That's still a decent amount.
Yeah, it's been it like Micah said, it's heavy and slow and pretty bleak, but I will say it's worth it if you get to the end.
Yeah.
Don't turn this off before the end because
No.
it doesn't end bleak. It ends in a very positive way. And let's rate it and then we can talk about how it ends.
Okay.
So this was actually like I knew I liked the movie the whole time and I knew I really liked certain aspects of it such as Killian Murphy's performance, the washing the hands detail, for example, some of the conversations, some of the editing techniques, like when it's flashing back to his younger days.
Mhm.
I knew I liked it. And Killian Murphy, did I say Killian Murphy's performance?
I think so.
And Emily Watson's performance. Like, I knew I loved all these aspects of the movie, but I was sort of like tracking to just like the movie. And then something clicked for me at the end of the movie. And then I decided that I loved it. So I'm gonna give this a 9.5.
I was also gonna give it that.
Um, it's a 9.5 sad Killian Murphys out of 10.
That's fair. Um, like I just barely said, I think this movie does an amazing job of just getting rid of all of the fluff and all of the distractions and really forces you to focus on what is important about this movie, and it's the message.
Yeah.
I think all of the acting, the writing,
Yeah.
all of it is amazing.
Uh-huh.
I think I am also going to rate it a 9.5. And this is not the movie's fault. I just am so sad for all these women that had
Uh-huh.
to go through this.
Yeah, it's
You
heavy.
know?
It's not something you're going to want to watch a ton.
No, but I definitely think I'll
But
watch it again.
no, I think it's one that you kind of need to force yourself to watch.
Yeah.
Not too often because it'll lose its potency, but every once in a while around the Christmas season, this is a good one to watch to remind you that we need to be helping other people.
Charitable
Yeah.
love. Yeah. So a 9.5 coal sheds.
Okay. So
This is spoilers.
spoiler time. So in the very first flashback, I think, to Bill's childhood, he's reading a book to
Mrs. Watson.
Mrs. Watson, and it's pretty clear for anyone that's read A Christmas Carol or anyone that's heard the story that he's reading A Christmas Carol, the very end of A Christmas Carol, because it ends with, "I'll keep Christmas in my heart, past, present, and future." You know, because the ghosts of past, present, and future visit him, and Scrooge by the end decides that he's going to keep the Christmas spirit in his heart, not just
In the season, but year round.
yeah, and also like while remembering the past, focusing on the present and looking to the future. And I reviewed A Christmas Carol, the book, last year, and I gave it a 10 out of 10 because it is my favorite Christmas story. I think it's really, really profound and really excellent. And I liked that they used it, obviously, in here. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
And it's also the element through which you realize that that's Bill that you're seeing in those flashback scenes because he mentions Dickens in his older
Like in the
life.
present.
Yeah, in the present, and you realize, oh, that was Bill that was reading a Christmas Carol, and now he's asking for David Copperfield in the present.
Yeah.
So, um, so that's cool. But at the end, you realize that. Sorry, I guess I didn't have these thoughts totally in my mind, but he at the end decides to take the girl that he's been seeing at the convent and take her out of the convent and bring her home.
Yeah.
So he finds her in the coal shed
She's
like
being
midway
abused. I mean,
midway through the movie and brings her in and he's like, I found her in the coal shed. And then they both get taken to Emily Watson's office and she's like,
Sister Mary's.
yeah, and she's like, who put you in there, child? And it's it's like sort of ambiguous. I was like, I think she's intimidating this girl into saying that she was locked in there by the other girls because they were playing hide and seek or whatever. I think that's what's happening, but I'm not totally sure.
Right.
Because eventually the girl says we were playing and then I got locked in there by the other girls, and then Sister Mary brushes it off and says, "Ah, it's just games. Okay, just go to your room and sleep
Go
the day
eat.
away."
This other sister, feed her and let her rest the rest of the day.
Right.
And then, as this conversation continues with just Bill and Sister Mary, it becomes more obvious that Sister Mary does not want this to be talked about.
Yeah.
She ends up bribing him
Yeah.
to keep his mouth shut,
Basically.
pretty much.
Without saying it, she writes a Christmas card and puts some money in there and says, "Give it to your wife." And
50 quid.
Bill doesn't want to take it, but Bill's so meek and he still has some respect, I think, for the church like everybody does in his town and for the sisters and fear of them.
And he knows that his daughters go to the school and
Right.
his other daughters need to go to the. So there's so many different elements
Yeah.
that he's thinking about and has to decide very quickly. And so he takes it.
He takes the money.
But immediately he feels guilty about it.
Yeah.
As he's leaving the office, he kind of like leans against the wall and you can see he's upset that he did it. And he didn't. The letter was addressed to his wife and he doesn't give it to her right away.
Well, and before he leaves, he goes and finds, so the girl's name is Sarah that he found in the coal shed, and which is also his mother's name. And he goes and finds Sarah, and he's like, "What's your name?" She tells him her name. He tells her his name. He says, "If you need anything, come find me at the coal yards by the quay. Like that's where I work." So, he kind of tries to help her. And a normal person, I think, would
So
that's enough. I
that was
did I
good
did my part, right? Anyway, since he delivers coal to this church, well, I think he just decides to go back and check, right?
at the end.
Yeah, at
Yeah.
the end. So he checks again, and she's been put in the coal shed again. So he's like,
This is obviously not kids playing games. It's
no,
the middle of the night.
yeah,
It's freezing.
yeah.
And he picks her up and he brings her home.
And yeah, this is the end of the movie. Him walking slash carrying her home to his house, which is not super close,
No.
up steep hills and across bridges and stuff.
Yeah.
And I realized that we have now come full circle to keeping Christmas past, present, and future in your heart. So it was introduced at the very beginning of the movie, and it comes full circle at the end.
There's this part where, he brings her into his home. They're in the entryway. He goes into the bathroom that's right there to go and wash his hands. And he comes out, and this scene is shot. This part is just shot from in the bathroom, looking at her standing against the wall across the hallway. And he's waiting for her to come after him to go into the house. And you just see his hand
Yeah.
stick out to grab hers.
Uh huh.
And she grabs it, and they go inside, and they go in to see his family and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
That was like the perfect, just his hand
Yeah.
sticking out. Like, come on, we'll be okay.
Yeah.
I loved that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was wondering, I wrote this down. So, towards the beginning middle of the movie, when Bill shows up at the convent and he needs to be paid, he ends up going into the convent, and one of these girls, it's probably Sarah,
Mm-hmm.
runs up to him and is like crying, "Please take me. Please get me out of here. Please help me leave."
Yeah. I think it is her
I think it is too.
because she's the one that he sees being pushed into the convent because I heard the mom calling her Sarah.
Yeah,
So I think it's the same girl the whole time.
right. So I was just wondering, you see someone in a bad situation and they are asking for your help. What is your moral obligation to help them?
Right? Because what can you do
Right.
realistically? Yeah, I don't know. Like if that happened to you, you mean?
Right.
What would you do? Yeah, I think most people would. This guy is not most people.
No.
And, what he does is the title of the film is maybe a little bit ironic because what he does is not a small thing. He's
No.
he's risking a lot, first of all,
Yeah.
and he already has 5 daughters and a wife, and he's now basically accepting 2 more people because this teenager is going to give birth in 5 months. So he's accepting 2 more people into his home, and that's not cheap, right?
No.
That's difficult. That's a difficult thing to do. But if you, because like they make a point of showing you how many women are at this place,
Dozens.
tons of them, and he's only helping one. So for what he's doing, it may be a small thing. It's maybe just a drop in the pond. But I think that if this movie can inspire you to just do something that you're not doing, it's done its part, right? Like you don't necessarily have to take in a homeless person off the street. I would not recommend that, because that's not safe.
Yeah.
But if this movie can hit you in a place where you'll give money to the next beggar that you see on the street
Or help
when
them in some way, if that's food or.
yeah, when you would not have done that otherwise, then I think this movie is doing what it is setting out to do, setting out to inspire you.
Yeah.
And it worked on me, like I'll say, like, and I really loved again, it was the realization because Scrooge says, "I'll keep the Christmas spirit in my heart." all year long. And as Killian Murphy's character Bill is bringing carrying this woman to his house, I realized he took that to heart when he was a kid, and he remembered it,
Yeah.
and it's coming full circle now. And so my favorite Christmas story of all time weaves its way into this movie in a really impactful way. And that's when I decided that I loved the movie, because I love A Christmas Carol and I love how this movie ends and they're tied together, you know.
Yeah.
So I think it's really good. I think people should go watch it,
Yeah.
and you should skip the Christmas pageant movie and go see this instead, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the Christmas pageant movie. Did I say that?
I thought you did.
I think I might have just said Christmas movie. This is a Christmas movie, as we have said ad nauseum at this point. But skip the Christmas pageant movie. Go watch this. This is great. Anything else you have to say?
No.
Okay.
Okay. So the other movie that we watched recently was A Complete Unknown. And this is the biopic about
Bob
Bob
Dylan.
Dylan, starring Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah.
So the movie starts out Bob Dylan. It's 1961, and he gets to New York, and he's looking for Woody
Woody Guthrie.
Woody Guthrie.
Yeah.
He gets told he's in a hospital nursing facility in Jersey, and when he shows up, Woody's brother.
Not brother. His friend.
Oh, his friend. I thought they were brothers.
No.
Oh, okay.
Pete Seeger.
Pete Seeger is there, and Bob Dylan is like, you know, you're the reason I came out here to Woody Guthrie. You know, I'd love to play. Basically, plays him a song. Woody Guthrie loves it, and Pete,
Pete
um,
Seeger takes him home.
takes him home because Bob Dylan has just arrived from somewhere in the Midwest. I can't remember,
Yeah.
and is an art, a musician with no money. Brings him home, lets him stay on the couch for a bit, and kind of introduces him to all the right people, has him
Yeah.
play at all the right places,
Yeah.
basically gives him a
A
chance.
start.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and then his career basically takes off.
Right. And so just really fast, this is a very short look into Bob Dylan's life. I think this is from 61 to 65.
Okay. You mean a small part of his career?
Yes.
Because the movie's not short. The movie
No, no, no,
is,
no. I'm saying his whole life and his career. Yeah, this movie is about the start of his career.
yeah,
So it's just 4 years, and you just really see how big he got in those 4 years.
right.
So
And I've heard a lot of people complain about this movie because it doesn't unravel the mystery that is Bob Dylan. Sort of an enigmatic guy, famous for being hard to pin down in interviews, and he gives responses that don't really give answers to the questions that journalists are asking him. So people have complained about that because they wanted to know more about him. But this does not do that. It focuses on the music. And also there's a theme of Bob Dylan doing what Bob Dylan wants to do, and that's introduced very, very early on in the film, and it culminates with his performance where he goes electric at, what's the name of the folk festival?
Newport
The Newport Folk
Folk Festival,
Festival,
which is
which,
Newport, Rhode Island.
yeah, which was met with a lot of scorn by the folk community, because that's where Bob Dylan got his start in folk music, and that's definitely what his most famous songs are. But he was always interested in other stuff, and so he eventually started moving more into electrical and band music, and that's where this movie ends, is him doing that. So there's definitely a theme of Bob Dylan doing what Bob Dylan wants to do, and we get to see a lot of musical numbers in between.
The music in this,
Yeah,
amazing.
really, 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 really good.
So I watched this interview with Timothy Chalamet, He was on Theo Vaughn's podcast. Worth listening to, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Um, but he was saying that Timothy Chalamet was saying that he's had 5 years to prepare for this role.
Yeah.
And he was like, if we had shot this film back in 2018 when we were supposed to, I would not have been as prepared as I am now.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have been as good, knowing that this is what it is now.
Yeah.
With him talking the way that Bob Dylan does and just his singing and all of that.
He sounds like Bob Dylan.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's not like a exact imitation of Bob Dylan. It does sound a little different,
it's really good
but I
though.
think it's authentic too.
Yeah,
And you can't just mimic. Like that's not good enough.
yeah,
You sort of have to. I don't really know how to describe it, but you need to sound like Bob Dylan and sort of imitate Bob Dylan, but make it authentic to you at the same time and make it feel like something Bob Dylan would do, and it feels like that. And it's not just him; it's the girl that plays Melissa Barbaro. She plays Joan Baez,
yeah.
Monica Barbaro. Sorry, she does incredibly well.
Yeah, we were listening to some of her music today, and I was like,
Joan
yeah,
Baez's,
Joan
yeah,
Baez's music. And I was like, Monica Barbaro, an amazing job.
yeah. Ed Norton,
He does such a good job too.
and Boyd Holbrook as Johnny Cash.
Was such a good pick.
So good.
Yeah. They
Yeah,
had amazing casting for this. Like they cast the exact right person
yeah,
for these.
100%.
Um oh, what were we gonna say?
I loved that musical number that Pete Seeger does where he's doing In the Jungle or whatever. I don't know if it was, that must be a folk song.
Well, didn't we just listen to the original or no?
Like I'm saying the
Yeah,
Weem Away.
yeah.
That must have come from something else because I think that In the Jungle came out after. So like
Oh, interesting.
that bit of it, I don't know. Anyway, he does that song and it's really cool because he has
It's interactive with the crowd and has them.
has some sing the high part and some sing the low part and some sing the tenor part and then it's like sounds really good when they're all singing together, right?
Yeah.
Um, there's so many moments like that. There's so many great, like when Bob Dylan sings, which one is it? It's the Your Sons in The Times They Are a Changing.
Hmm.
That's awesome because his girlfriend like reads the lyrics in his apartment earlier and like says them to him, and then he unveils the song at the Newport Folk Festival and you hear those lyrics and that song is somewhat familiar to you even if you're not a Bob Dylan listener, because you've heard some of the lyrics because the girlfriend read them to. And it's just a lot of cool special
Yeah.
moments as they pertain to the music that are done so well and edited so well. All the singing is live as well, and it's performed beautifully. It really elevates this from being just a run of the mill music biopic to a really good musical biopic.
Yeah.
Micah has some big talking points she wants to talk about that might be a little spoilery, but caveat, they're introduced pretty early on, so it's not like a big twist that we're giving away at the end. So
Well, let me just say these other things really fast.
sure.
I am not the biggest Bob Dylan fan.
Hmm.
Every time Braden would play it, I'd be like, turn this off.
Yeah.
So I went into this just like, okay, fine, I'll go see this with you, Braden.
Yeah.
Like, it'll make you happy, I'll go.
Hmm.
This movie was incredible.
Yeah.
I think that, in my opinion, this is the best musical biopic since Straight Outta Compton.
Right.
I have not seen every musical biopic that has come out, but I've seen a few.
You've seen more than me for sure. Because
Really?
what have we? Because you, hang on, you watched Elvis, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you saw Elvis. You saw Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah.
You saw goddamn Walk the Line.
Right.
So when she says since Straight Outta Compton, these are the ones that we have seen basically our entire life, and Straight Outta Compton is the one that we've liked the best.
Yeah.
So Micah's saying next to Straight Outta Compton
Right.
rather than since Straight Outta
Since it
Compton.
was released.
Yeah.
I had this thought at the beginning of the movie before we get into the spoilers.
Hmm.
So Bob Dylan shows up at that hospital. Pete Seeger takes him home, gives him a chance because he hears his music and thinks, you're going to do great for folk music. You are like the missing piece that we need to make folk music
Mainstream.
basically
Yeah.
big.
Bring it to more people.
Yeah. And I had this thought at the beginning of the movie, like, that's how so many people, like artists, musicians, get a chance is by other creatives lifting them up. And it's so interesting because, like, in a lot of ways, that's needed. But for a lot of people, it comes back and bites them in the ass,
Hmm.
which is too bad
Yeah.
because it's almost like a requirement to get started in a lot of these industries is to have someone introduce you and bring you to the right places and meet the right people and all of that. But then people can do whatever they want and it
Right.
bites you in the ass a lot of times.
Yeah. One thing I liked about this also is Bob Dylan is difficult to work with, let's say. He's sort of difficult to be in a relationship with, difficult to work with. He's going to do what he's going to do. But despite how frustrated people get with him in this movie, when they hear his lyrics, they connect with him.
Yeah.
Like they love him because of what he is writing. And you see this literally like where he's fighting with a certain character, and then this character listens to him perform, and you can tell that they're just like, I love this guy, you know,
Yeah, because he's such an amazing lyricist.
because of his yeah, he's a poet.
Yeah.
And that's how, like, that's what Bob Dylan is to people that love Bob Dylan, is someone someone that writes poetry that makes you think and makes you like, what does this mean? Yes, but also what does this mean to me? Like when I hear a lyric from Bob Dylan, what does it mean to me? And that's how good his writing is, that you can hear it and it doesn't necessarily mean one thing. It can mean many different things to many different people. And that's what I think makes him so special, even though he's not the best singer.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, he's not. You know,
Yeah.
I'm a Bob Dylan fan and I can admit that.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, another cool thing that I noticed, I guess, rather, as we were watching this movie, is when he was first starting out, apparently they had Joan Baez debut some of his songs before
He released them.
he released his record, and she covers some of his songs at festivals and, you know, bars or whatever. And i th- I had this thought, like, if someone that had a better voice than Bob Dylan had written these songs, they'd be much more popular today than they are now. You know, they were as popular as they were in the 60s and the 70s when folk had its heyday, but nowadays it's like you will not find a Gen Z Bob Dylan fan or a Gen
Mm-mm.
Alpha Bob Dylan fan. Like, they just don't exist because they don't like the way he sounds. It's more about the sound than it is about the lyrics nowadays, it seems like. I think that if Harry Styles, let's say, had written Bob Dylan's music, it would be immensely popular
Yeah.
because of just a change in voice. Because his lyrics are transcendent.
Yeah.
They're special.
I will say I had no idea. So, in the beginning of the movie, his girlfriend brings him to a lot of civil rights rallies and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And I had no idea that folk was more than just sitting around the campfire,
Hmm. Yeah.
you know,
Petey.
right,
Yeah.
playing your banjo and just having a good time. You know, a lot of these musicians were civil rights activists
Yeah.
and like went to these rallies and wrote songs about injustices and stuff like that.
Right.
And I had no idea. So that part of the movie I thought was really amazing.
Yeah.
Being taught that.
And it made you have appreciation for him a little more.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
sitting around the campfire, folk is not what I want to be listening to, but I can appreciate the impact. that it had at the time, and the things that they were trying to change about the world and
Yeah.
all of that is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, songs, there used to be so many protest songs.
Yeah.
It's definitely not just Bob Dylan, although he has his protest songs for sure. The freaking the Masters of War song. You remember that one?
No.
Anyway, there's that, but like the Rolling Stones have their protest songs, CCR has their protest songs, Pink Floyd has their protest songs. There's so many. Bruce Springsteen, he's the one that did Born in the USA, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there's so many people that got political with their writing, and I'm sure it exists nowadays, but it's not as prevalent.
That we're not
Yeah.
aware of it,
And
or can't think of it off the top of our head right now.
yeah. And I think that that is, I'm going to be careful when I say this because I agree with people that say that they would prefer politics to stay out of media, at least in a heavy-handed way.
Entertainment.
Yeah, I don't like being preached to, like other people don't like being preached to. So when it happens in a movie, I definitely can find myself rolling my eyes and whatnot. As far as music goes, though, I think that some of the best songs of all time, they're saying something,
They have a message. It's not just,
right?
hey, let's have a fun time.
Yeah,
Hey, I'm happy.
they mean something, you know, like like "Gimme Shelter," for example, by the Rolling Stones. That's saying something. It's not just a cool rock and roll song, and we don't get very much of that anymore, which is sad, I
Yeah.
think. So
Yeah.
it's nice to go back to an era where that was a thing, right? During a time, at least we can all agree that the messages in these songs are good,
Yeah.
you know, hindsight being 2020. We can all agree the civil rights movement was a good thing,
Yeah.
and songs supporting it were impactful and valuable and good.
Yeah.
So that's nice. Anything else before we rate it?
No.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna give this a 9 chaotic Bob Dylan orders at Dairy Queen out of 10.
You're so dumb.
This has been a joke that
One of our friends and
yeah,
Braden have had. There's this specific restaurant up in here in Utah that, for some reason,
I-
Braden and our friend have decided that when we're standing in line trying to figure out what we want, they're gonna order in the way that Bob Dylan sings.
right. So it would be something like, "What can I get you?" Oh, let me see. I like number 9, but maybe number 1 or 2, do you think? And just like, can you order, please, sir?
Like, just tell me what you want.
I think I'd like a number 9 without any food. What the are you talking about? Just like, and this cracks us up every time. We just sort of riff off of each other and come up with where a new song is the theme every time. And
That's funny.
so that's the inside joke. You've now been let in.
Damn it, I had what I was gonna say for my thing. And your joke messed it up.
Oh, I'm sorry. But I think that the people will appreciate it. At least I hope they will. If they listened this long.
Um, like I said, Bob Dylan's music is not my favorite. I don't think I was probably the target audience for this movie,
Yeah.
but I really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah.
You know, uh, Braden said that people are complaining that they didn't really learn about Bob Dylan. Again, I don't think I'm the target audience because I went into it knowing nothing
And you
about
did
him,
learn
and I
something.
learned.
Yeah.
I felt like a lot.
I did too. I didn't know anything about the Joan Baez relationship and
Yeah,
Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie. I didn't know any of that stuff. So yeah, you're right. We did learn.
yeah. I think I'm gonna rate this an 8.75.
Okay.
An 8.75. Do whatever the you want.
Nice. Track some mud on someone's living room carpet.
Yeah, and he's the first.
Whatever he says.
Yeah. Okay, so Parents Guide really fast.
Hmm.
This does have language,
It's not bad though. If I had to guess, and this is me spitballing, it's probably 10 F words in the whole thing.
and we cannot remember where they were.
I know that they get a little more prevalent in the final music festival, just because frustrations begin to boil
Yeah.
over. But like most of the movie is very very clean, and then there's nothing else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's the only thing for Parents Guide.
yeah.
So spoilers ahead. Um, one of the things that is really big part of this movie, Bob Dylan starts dating this woman,
Hmm.
Sylvie,
Yeah.
and they meet very early on in his career. He has no money. She's the one paying for everything. He ends up moving in with her. They start dating. They seem very happy.
Yeah.
She is in school, but she kind of introduces him to going to these protests for civil rights and stuff like that. So she kind of and is able. She just seems like someone that takes him as he is and doesn't really expect a whole lot except that he will love her back. I think
Yeah.
in his own way, but just love her back. And at some point, she goes on a semester abroad, and Bob Dylan doesn't really understand why she's leaving. He thinks it's stupid, but he's like, okay, fine, like, just go. While she's gone, he ends up sleeping with Joan Baez,
Hmm.
and they have an affair.
Yeah.
And I think that this movie handled this affair and this romance between him and Joan so much better than Walk the Line.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
I don't know.
Oh. Okay.
I think that it just, instead of focusing fully on, like, oh, he's a piece of shit and he's cheating on his girlfriend that has supported him and, done all these amazing things for him, instead of
Hmm.
that being the full focus,
Yeah.
the focus was on his music. And hey, while he was focusing on his music and while his career was taking off, this was also happening.
Could it be argued that perhaps his infidelities and his flaws were brushed over in this movie when they
For
should have been
sure.
more highlighted?
For sure.
Well, I agree with what you're saying though, and what I think is interesting is as an audience member of this film, you know how I mentioned that he has a fight with Joan Baez. Joan Baez hates him, and then he gets up on stage and sings, and it zooms in on Joan Baez's face, and she's connecting with him because of his songs, his
Mm-hmm.
lyrics, right? As an audience member, that's kind of the same road that we go down with this character, because we see what he does in real life and we don't like it, and then he sings, and his and then we become a fan of him all over again.
Yeah.
It's sort of like it's the same thing that's happening to the characters in the movie that happened to me, at least watching it, because I can't condone his actions with as far as the love triangle goes, but damn if he's not a good writer, and damn if I don't connect to the songs that he sings.
Yeah. I think the other thing that I really wondered about is why they didn't show any drug use
Hmm.
for anybody. Because we all know that Johnny Cash was on something.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And the way that
Wait, Johnny Cash or Bob Dylan?
Johnny Cash,
Okay, yeah.
we all know he was on something. And the way that Bob Dylan acts throughout the movie is not in line with a sober person at points.
Yeah,
And, it's that's not what the focus of the movie is. And I understand that, but I was just curious about it the whole time.
yeah.
So,
At the end of the day, I remember seeing the trailer, and music biopic trailers work on me so effectively. I don't know if I've talked about this on the cast,
you're so dumb.
but I've definitely brought this up to Micah. In fact, I think I brought this up
He's talked about it a lot recently.
vis-a-vis nothing, because
What does that
we
even
were
mean?
driving down the highway, and I was like, you know what? I think I figured out why musical biopic trailers work on me so well. And Micah was like, what the And I was like, because I think what it is a trailer is well edited, right? And it's meant to get you interested in the movie. But then you get to combine that with music that I already love from the artist. And then it gets me really hyped. And so it's always going to work on me. The Bob Marley one really worked on me. And I was like, oh, I hope that's good. And apparently it wasn't, so I didn't watch it. And then the Amy Winehouse one came out, and I was like, ooh, I like her music. I hope that's good. Loved the trailer. Apparently the movie wasn't very good. And then I saw the Bob Dylan one, and I was like, oh, I hope that's good. I really hope that's good. That's a great trailer, but it's probably going to suck. I'm just very relieved that this doesn't suck.
Yeah.
This was very good. I enjoyed it a lot, and it did justice to the trailer, or the trailer did it justice rather. I don't know.
Yeah. Um, I think it would be really hard to date and be in a relationship with someone that is so focused like on their craft and like has such a passion for like what they're doing.
Right, like Travis Kelsey.
Right. Just because like Bob Dylan's creativity is manic
Right.
at times for
Yeah,
sure.
because he'll wake up at like 2 a.m. and turn the light on and strum his guitar
And start writing.
while his lover is sleeping.
Right.
Like, could you maybe like go outside and
Right.
do that?
But he can't wait. He has to get the ideas out.
Right.
And just knowing that you would come second to that always
Yeah.
would be so hard.
And that's maybe something that I like better than Walk the Line, because there's a part in Walk the Line where he is he's playing Walk the Line, which is a song about how much he loves his partner and how loyal he is, and how he could never think of being with anyone else. And as this song is playing, he's having numerous affairs.
Yeah.
So you see in Johnny Cash a certain hypocrisy that's going on. In Bob Dylan, at least in this movie, you don't really see that, because he's having affairs, right? But he's not pretending like he's this loyal, super great guy. He just is who he is.
Yeah.
And maybe there's something more honest about that, right?
Yeah. Not that it's okay.
Not that it's okay, but like at least you can respect that more.
Yeah.
But uh, now talking about Johnny Cash, this point has been made by pretty much everybody that's reviewed this movie, but James Mangold directed Walk the Line, and James Mangold directs this movie. So this is his second time directing Johnny Cash
Mm-hmm.
in a movie, but this time it's Boyd Holbrook. I freaking loved him in this movie.
Yeah.
I would watch a Boyd Holbrook Johnny Cash movie,
I
100%.
would too.
He's just Boyd Holbrook, I think, is one of the most underrated actors working today.
Yeah.
And especially because of his involvement with Justified City Primeval, and how much hate he got for not being Walton Goggins, which I think is stupid.
Yeah.
He's just very underappreciated, and I'm happy to see him in so many projects. He does a fantastic job as Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
And his Johnny Cash and Bob Dylan's relationship in this movie is one of the more like wholesome things in this movie.
They understand each other.
Yeah, I love their pen pal dynamic,
Yeah.
and how much they support each other. And when Johnny Cash like holds up the guitar to him to go back up on stage at Newport,
Mm-hmm.
it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking about Newport. So at the very end of the movie, they're at this festival, and Bob Dylan has changed up his music, and he's gone electric. And the festival board does not want him to play that. They want him to play his original folk music.
Yeah, right.
So it becomes a big deal, big discussion, whatever. Bob Dylan ends up playing electric.
Because Johnny Cash tells him,
You got to stay true to who you are.
he's like no. Bob Dylan says, I want to play what I want to play, but no one wants to hear it, man. And Johnny Cash is like, well, shit, Big D, I want to hear it. Track some mud on someone's carpet.
Yeah. And he brings out his band and he starts playing his electric music, and the crowd throws a fit.
Yeah.
It was kind of giving me vibes of what I imagine that Rock the Casbah or like that. Who's that? The
The
Clash.
Clash playing at the bar fight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not that extreme, but it was giving me vibes of that, and I thought it was cool.
Yeah. No, I actually kind of wish that they would have ended the movie there. Micah disagrees with me about this, which is fine.
Is it?
But yeah, it's fine. We can have different opinions. I just felt like they introduced this idea of Bob going against the grain at the very beginning of the movie because he's in the car with Pete Seeger and he turns on the radio and they're listening to this blues song with lots of instruments and Bob Dylan comments on how good he thinks the guitar sounds or something and Pete Seeger's like, "Yeah, but a good song, a really good song, you don't need all the extra bells and whistles." And then Bob Dylan's like, "Yeah, well sometimes they sound good though." And that's
And
like in the first 20 minutes of the
that
movie.
conversation comes and bites Pete in the ass.
Right. And I felt like this was foreshadowed at the very beginning and Bob Dylan finishes his uh
Set.
his set with How Does It Feel? Is that the name of the song? I think it's How Does It Feel? How does it feel? That one. And I kind of wish that they had ended the movie with all the shit being thrown at them as that song ended.
Mm.
Because I would have loved, because it just, the theme comes full circle. But I guess historically, that's not really what happened. He went back out and played one of his old folk songs and then left. So, to be authentic to what actually happened, I understand why they didn't end it with that. Um, you really liked the ending though, right?
Yeah, so the movie ends
Which I liked the ending.
right after that
Hmm.
festival. He goes and sees Woody Guthrie
Yeah,
at the hospital. And there's this song playing in the background. I forgot to look this up.
I think it's Woody Guthrie's song.
But he's like, "Goodbye, my old friend,"
Yeah,
is the song that's playing. So they have like this last moment, and then Bob leaves, gets on his motorcycle, and rides off.
yeah,
And Woody goes up to the window and is looking out as like the song comes to an end, I think. Or maybe it already ended. Anyways, that's not important. And he watches Bob ride off and he knows he's never going to see Bob again. I
yeah.
wish the movie had ended right there. Instead, they cut to just a scene of Bob riding his motorcycle
Motorcycle.
right after that, and then it ends.
Yeah, it's
So
not a bad ending by any
no,
means.
I really like the ending.
Yeah, we just both wish that it had ended in a different spot. And actually, this is something that I tend to I tend to have the same feeling with James Mangold's other movies, at least some of them, because Ford versus Ferrari, I wish had ended
Hmm.
a scene earlier, as they're walking off into the distance and not necessarily on the downer
Yeah,
ending that it did end with. But it is what it is. It's still a great movie. This is still a great movie.
yeah.
Is there anything else?
Um, I was gonna ask you, who do you think could have played Bob Dylan besides Timothy Chalamet?
I don't know. This is probably it would probably have to be like an unknown, right?
Yeah,
I can't think of because you got to be a skinny guy. You got to be able to grow that curly black hair, that crazy curly black hair. So who does that leave us with?
could Tom Holland have done it?
That's what I was thinking. No, I don't think so. I don't
Okay,
think his hair is wild enough.
okay. So not Zac Efron.
No, too big.
Um, Dylan O'Brien.
Who's that guy?
He's the guy from like Maze Runner.
No,
What about
no.
Ansel Elgort?
Yeah, he might have been able to actually.
Okay.
Aaron Taylor Johnson.
What about Joe or the guy from the
Maybe. Yeah, he could have done it
what is
maybe.
that show?
But
Stranger Things.
yeah, listen, I am always impressed with I'm having a stroke. I'm always impressed with Tim Chalamet. Even though I wouldn't say that like I'm his number one fan or anything. I like him. But then whenever he's in a movie, I'm like, I really like him.
Yeah.
He's just one of those guys.
I think he is definitely trying to leave his mark, and he's doing a great job.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
All right.
coming up, we have The Order,
Mm-hmm.
And I think Braden's gonna go watch Nosferatu.
Yeah, that might be a separate episode though because we might have our some guests talk about Nosferatu with us. So the order for sure,
Oh, Braden
and
has Fargo
Fargo
coming up.
season 3.
Yeah.
Finished that.
So that's what's coming up.
Yeah.
So have a great week, everybody. Bye.